Hi, welcome to The Vibe with Vasudha. Today, I have the impossible task of keeping up with a man who's been everywhere, seen everything, and somehow still finds time to tell us why it mostly doesn't matter. The irrepressible Suhel Seth. This isn't going to be a TED talk or a preach on a particular subject. We're going to peel back layers about perception and perfection. Now, who better to unpack the art and myth of being almost perfect than a man who's seen perfection across Broadway stages, time galas, and Indian boardrooms? So he'll say it, you're a marketing maven, a master conversationalist, and someone who probably attends more gala dinners a month than I have takeaway coffee. From the time 100 gala to Broadway front rows, from ad world revolutions to boardroom evolutions, Suhel, you've seen it all, said it all, and more importantly, said it better. Which begs me to ask you, what did you think of my book? Almost perfect, but mostly not. And if you had to come up with a tagline for the book and for me, since you've known me for a while, what would it be?
Almost perfect with all the imperfections. Which, by the way, is what humanity is all about. There is no perfect storm, there's no perfect being, there's no perfect book. I mean, people in this country and across the world have found fault with Shakespeare. People have found fault with Premchand. They found fault with Dinkar. And when I say found fault, is because you and I can't manage people's scholarly expectations. I may have a different set of expectations from Pride and Prejudice than I would have from Dante, than I would have from, let's say, Oscar Wilde. So for any author to manage everyone's perceptions is silly. You can't serve a book like you would serve a buffet. So don't ever expect to please everyone, that too in life. Don't expect to write the perfect book, you never will. Don't expect to be the author who everyone loves, they never will. That's how it is.
Love it. I'm going to keep that in mind for the next one. Now, you recently attended the Time 100 Gala, rubbing shoulders with the best. Give us one dinner table conversation you overheard that made you go, the world really is a stage.
So, I will never talk about dinner conversations which I've overheard because I think that's in bad form. But, we make too much of a fetish of these galas and these dinners and all of that. It's all irrelevant in the longer and in the larger scheme of things. For instance, I'm a great believer that you have to take life as it comes. You have to pass up some opportunities. You have to take some opportunities head on. But for people to, go rah-rah and feel all chuffed about attending a gala or a dinner is ridiculous. The good thing is that when I was growing up, we were taught to wear success lightly, if not at all, and to remember that after we die, perhaps for 13 days, because in Hinduism you have to be vegetarian and no booze, but people don't remember. So this whole, kerfuffle about, we must create a legacy, people must remember us, it's utter rubbish. No one remembers you other than your immediate family, and that too sparingly.
Sure.
And tragedy is all of humanity is enticed with the idea of legacy building. We leave behind an inheritance. People will say nice things about us. I'm not interested. Churchill famously said the only person you've got to be popular with is your spouse, and when I last checked, I was. So for the rest, it doesn't matter.
That's going to be a separate conversation.
Yeah, because in Delhi, you walk out of the door, people will abuse your food, curse your hospitality, or for that matter in Bombay. So to expect people to be grateful and gracious is something of the past.
I'm curious though, what was the energy in that room like?
The energy was good because you had all very successful people, but you also had very insecure people. Remember,
I was just going to ask.
Success always carries with it a high level of insecurity.
Yeah.
All these Bollywood actors and Hollywood actors who tell you, we don't like the paparazzi, we don't like this. All bullshit. They're the ones who inform their agents to inform the paparazzi to stand outside airports. I'm in and out of an airport every day. I haven't seen any paparazzi waiting, unless, of course, there's some, visiting star.
You're right.
The problem is the day the paparazzi does not come, or the day people stop asking them for their autographs or selfies, they will feel diminished because we have allowed ourselves the trappings of success and power to define us rather than our knowledge or our culture. And that's a problem we are seeing across India. We are moving away from our rootedness, we are moving away from our cultural anchor. And that's why I'm glad you wrote a book. I mean, at one time I used to joke saying that there are more authors in India than functioning traffic lights, but in a way it's good. Someone is at least putting pen to paper rather than knitting their next knitwear for some silly, bash.
Agreed. In your opinion, who is the best in the business? I mean, from the best in the business, are they almost perfectly organizing their every move? Or have the ones with the best careers been those that have been on mostly non-scripted paths?
A bit of both. It's very, it's impossible to say one or the other. Discipline is a part of successful careers. The ability to respond, the ability to plan time, the ability to do things that you've promised to do, the ability to stay focused, stay extremely purposeful. These, to my mind, are attributes of success. See, it really doesn't matter whether it's scripted or non-scripted, because eventually someone will say, oh, but God gave us this, or oh, my parents did this for me. I don't care. People confuse nepotism with hereditary wealth, which again is fine. I'm not a person who says, oh, Karan Johar must not take people who are from the film industry. That's his problem. See, things work depending on how good the person is. You have innumerable examples of people from very well-established film families who've made a failure of themselves. So it's very difficult to pinpoint and say that, oh, this works and this doesn't work. It's horses for courses.
How was New York?
New York, as lovely as ever.
What was your favorite play? Was there any that made you want to storm the stage and improvise the ending?
I think I would have improvised the ending of Othello.
Okay.
Not obviously with a view of changing the lines, but from the way I thought Denzel Washington, who's a brilliant actor, and I've seen him do Brutus in Caesar, I think at the end there was a bit of hamming to my mind. But
I saw your post and I was so jealous.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to catch that
Yeah.
when I go next. And which one was like messy, chaotic, and caught the beautiful
Glengarry Glen Ross with
Okay.
Kieran McCulkin and Bill Burr. They were excellent. That was an excellent play, well acted. But see, I see plays every time I'm abroad, which is every month.
Okay.
So for me, theatre is the elixir because I've done many plays, 167, and I genuinely believe that theatre is the purest form of the craft of thespianism.
I relate to that because my earliest memories of traveling to London was catching a West End play with my parents.
West End play or musical?
A bit of both.
So I think musicals are a disaster.
You think
They've
so? My
been
first was
inflicted-
Starlight Express and I kind of loved
Yeah,
it.
all of them. They are like
At 7.
they are disastrous. I would never allow people to watch
But
musicals.
imagine a 7-year-old watching
Doesn't
Starlight
matter.
Express.
I would
loved
much
it.
rather have my 5-year-old watch Shakespeare.
You've seen scandals, spectacles, and stalwarts up close. My book is a tribute to that spirit. A little glitter, a little grime, and the human spirit. Do you think marketing today sells too much perfection?
Not at all. In fact, marketing sells imperfection. Look at Donald Trump. Prime example of imperfection being the President of the United States.
True.
I don't think marketing sells anything. Marketing's objective is to create consumer engagement between brand and target market.
Sure.
And if it creates that engagement, it's done its job. The job of marketing is not to change the world. We are not oracles. We are not messiahs. We're not the Antichrist or the Christ. And we are not waiting again for the perfect consumer or the perfect brand. I've seen brands tossed around. Many years ago, they found traces of benzene in Perrier. And of course, there was a huge crisis management a program around it, which
Really?
is the subject of a case study at Harvard. You saw what happened with pesticides and Coca-Cola and Pepsi here in India. So I think brands ultimately survive because they offer a benefit. You don't buy Colgate, you buy the whitest teeth. It so happens in your mind, Colgate is epitome of those white teeth. So that's what marketing is all about. People tend to complicate it, glamorize it, befuddle people with, oh, this is marketing. It's all very easy.
So pop culture is all about rebrands these days, from Britney's memoir to Barbie's existentialist crisis. who, according to you, a public figure or a brand needs a serious, almost perfect, but mostly not glow up?
I don't think anyone, yeah. To each their own. I've never passed judgment on an individual. I have my very strong views on Rahul Gandhi, but I've often praised him, saying that what he did with Bharat Jodo Yatra was impeccable, was outstanding. What he did by returning home, cutting short his US visit, then going to Kashmir to console the victims of that horrific Pahalgam tragedy, brilliant. I've praised Narendra Modi for his decisiveness. Do they individually have faults? Of course they do. All of us do. But when you have leaders who are willing to accept their mistakes, what did Prime Minister Modi do during COVID? He accepted that there was a screw up with ventilators. Leadership is about accepting mistakes and moving on. Leadership is not about perfection. Leadership is about telling people that there is someone who can guide them in whatever path they choose. And in this case, it's the path of citizenship.
So, how do you decide which cultural events you need to attend? Is it a bit of FOMO? Is it a bit of
I have no
networking,
FOMO about anything.
Or a genuine love for the arts?
And I don't believe in networking. I think it's the most abused, stupid concept. I decide what I like.
Okay, sure.
So if I like a particular exhibition, I will go and see it. If I like a particular play, I will go and see it. I'll give you an example. The only musical I saw, because I was very curious as a student about Hamilton, was Hamilton. And it opened in Bryant Park at $30 a pop. And I told a lot of my friends, both in the US and here, go and see the play. Half those jokers only went to see the play after the ticket prices were $1,000. They were on FOMO.
I remember that time.
But it was a great play. And it profiled a great American historical figure. But people didn't listen. So I go by...
So it's a genuine love.
And I go by things I like. I'm not the arbiter of good taste or cultural rendition. To each their own. If you like something, go and see it. If you don't like something, don't see it.
From all your Power Pack summits to theatre marathons, what's the secret sauce that kind of separates the truly unforgettable event from just another LinkedIn brag post?
So, A, I don't believe in all this LinkedIn nonsense. B, I don't care what other people think about my taste because it's my taste. I go and see a play. I like the play. If I don't like the play, I keep it to myself unless I'm asked. And if someone asks me for my opinion on a particular play, I give it. But it's not that I will warrant an opinion. It's only when you ask me about the plays did I warrant an opinion.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's my... See, people must learn to be comfortable in their skin. One of the reasons why I'm pretty cool about this aspect is because I travel. Travel allows you to reflect because you're alone most of the time.
Right.
And that point of introspection or reflection also helps you to delineate the wood from the tree.
Sure. What's one conversation and with who you had recently that kind of made you feel that life is not going completely to hell in a handheld phone grid?
Lots of conversations, I used to have many conversations with Ratan Tata. And they were great conversations because they were not to do with work. They were to do with our country. They were to do with the aspirations of our people. They
I
were
would
to
have
do with,
loved to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, they were to do with cancer mitigation. And, I like I've loved conversations with Mukesh Ambani because of his vision and his scale. I've also loved conversations as recently as last week with taxi drivers in New York. Because they tell you, and this was liberal New York, which in the last term of Trump hated him, which today has come to accept him. So it's not about who you're having the conversation with. It's about how that conversation makes you feel. And I'm always in learning mode because I believe that the quest for knowledge is unfinished and should be unfinished. Education has a defined time limit from class 1 to 12, college. But knowledge is enduring, unfinished, and insatiable.
As someone who's seen India evolve culturally, what's one thing you think we're getting right and one thing we're not?
I think what we're getting right is our return to history.
Okay.
And I want to be very careful here. I'm not talking about jingoism. I'm not talking about, oh, the perfect India, Sone ki chidiya nonsense. No. I'm glad that this government at the center has made it a point to bring back certain things which were missing. Let me give you an example. No one understands the importance of Bihar in ancient India. Very few people. Bihar gave us the finest universities which were at that point in time world leaders, whether it was Nalanda, whatever. We allowed that to slip. We are now bringing back that rootedness. My problem is that rootedness must not have a religious color. But that's bound to happen. That's politics. If you're able to segregate the politics from culture, you're fine. Which is why William Shakespeare was what he was. All of Shakespeare's political tragedies were a commentary on Elizabeth I's reign. So when in Julius Caesar, he says the things he does, it is actually meant as an indictment of Elizabeth I's reign. Where did he get all his information from? From prostitutes. He used to come every weekend to London. And that's where he filtered and picked up most of his information.
They were kind of like the couriers of information at the time.
B, also Plutarch, great author. Plutarch's Lives, the book Plutarch's Lives was also a source of inspiration for Shakespeare. Like that, there have been many. Look at what Sahir Ludhianvi said. And he was banned by Jawaharlal Nehru. So we've had great literatures in India. Look at Tagore's body of work. So I don't think it's one size fits all. I genuinely believe that India's cultural wealth has not been explored and has been allowed to go into rapid decline until that decline was arrested with this government coming in. Whatever reasons they may have, but as long as you link back to your cultural roots, it's a good thing.
You're right. We have a rich heritage in every state, be it education, the arts, and it's great that it's getting amplified now. You once said that brands are not built overnight. They're built over conversations. In today's cancel culture climate, how does one build resilience, both for brands and both for oneself?
See, brands have to build resilience for themselves. You can't build that resilience. It depends on the product mix. It depends on their ability to innovate, evolve. As far as yourself is concerned, you've got to be clear. The problem, Vasudha, is that many of us in this world exist for peer approval. The day you remove that, metric from your system, you'll be fine.
Sure. Now you've built brands, reputations, public perceptions. You understand public image. Is there still a space for vulnerability and failure in a society obsessed with hustle stories and success stories?
Of course. Of course. The problem with India is we're very castigating of failure. If Steve Jobs had been Indian, there'd have been no Apple. Because after he failed, no bank would have given him a loan. So we're very castigating about failure. And our society has zero tolerance for failure because we are great worshippers of mediocrity. And I believe the great Indian middle class book, which was written by Pavan Verma, it's very true. The middle class in India is the most selfish class.
I was going to ask you, are Indians more forgiving about failure in private and ruthless about it in public?
No, they are more, it's the same. Come home if you haven't performed well as a student and see what your mother tells you. Your father will berate you.
I was
they
an
will
A
shame
student,
you.
so I missed that bit.
Yeah, but point is,
Yeah.
That's how life is.
Yeah, fair. Okay, now let's play a game. I'll throw a word and you tell me the public figure that comes to your mind. Chaos.
Trump.
Genius.
Leader alive or dead?
Up to you.
Churchill.
Pretend perfect.
Boris Johnson.
Underrated.
Well, now Mike Carney.
Mostly not.
Narendra Modi.
Risk taker.
Modi.
Brand reboot.
Rahul Gandhi.
Almost perfect.
None.
Okay. Talking about socio-cultural shifts up close, in the age of 10-second reels and cancel culture, I really want to know, has depth become endangered?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Depth, scholarship, focus, staying the course, all these are casualties at the altar of speed. There's a difference between speed and alacrity. We are desperate to respond to everything. And we are also desperate to be part, as I said, of a peer ecosystem, which in any case doesn't give a shit about you. So you can keep, putting all these fancy things. They don't care.
Right.
You should do everything for yourself. And you should give back to society. Do everything for yourself which pleases you. Give back to society which also pleases you. As long as you can fulfill both these qualities, it's a life well lived.
From Bollywood to boardroom, what is one thing we're getting wrong about image today?
Nothing. I think it's fine. I mean, look, again, I'm not going to fall into the trap that I've just defined. I'm not the kind of person who finds fault. To each their own. Some people screw up, they rebound, they reboot. Good.
On a more personal note, Suhel, if you had to write your own almost perfect but mostly not chapter from your life, what would it be about?
I wouldn't write. My epitaph would be I couldn't give a shit.
I love it.
But I genuinely don't give a shit. Is it
I know
arrogance? That. Maybe. For others. I know it's not arrogant. I genuinely believe it.
I relate to that on some level, but obviously I'm younger and I have a lot more to kind of experience. But in my 30s, I relate to that. There's such a difference between when I was in my 20s and I really cared, and in my 30s, I don't give a shit.
And you can never please everyone, and you'll go out of your way, do nice things which will not be valued. Why waste your time? Enjoy enriching yourself. And I don't mean by material wealth. I mean enrich yourself through knowledge, enrich yourself culturally, enrich yourself through great conversations, and enrich yourself through cherishable memories of things you see, things you observe, things you imbibe, things you absorb. And I've always said the problem with the world today is we've stopped reading.
Sure.
We don't read as much as we should. We don't engage. We're not disagree. We don't disagree. We become disagreeable. And there is a red line between the two.
It's so interesting you say that. I was at my salon. They don't recognize what a Kindle is. And he said, what is that? And I was reading the Count Monte Cristi and I had to explain to him, this is a Kindle and it's a device where you can read your books. We're so, as a generation, we're just always on our phones.
Again, I don't care. It's for that child's parents to worry.
Yeah.
If those parents are literate, my guess is the parents are equally illiterate. Half your party people and half my party people are illiterate. Ask a lady in your, not kiddie party, whatever the club or whatever the hell it is. Ask them to talk about Dante. Yeah. Ask them about Shakespeare. You know what they answered? But how is he relevant? Obviously, he's not relevant. What is relevant is, Bollywood Wives or Lives or whatever the hell that program is. To each their own. Again, I have no qualms and I will never pass judgment on a series or whatever. People love it. That tells you it is not a pointer on a particular series or a particular film. It's a pointer on who we have become. And we today are a dumbed down society which is willing to crawl when asked to walk intellectually. That is the problem.
I can't disagree. Everyone's oversharing today. Everyone's rebranding. As a marketing guru, I mean, what, according to you, as a marketing rebrand, you thought was genius in 2025? And what made you cringe, if there was?
Nothing. It's too early.
Okay.
In 3 months you can't destroy something.
Okay.
So we'll see how 2025 plays out.
So I've been to your dinner parties. You're someone that can turn a dinner party into a think tank, a scandal into a masterclass, and a conversation into an unforgettable event. You are quite eternally unfiltered, impossibly informed, and always entertaining. What lesson out of your life's book would you like to impart a future generation that is finding a perfect filter for everything? One that can make life more meaningful, like we've chatted about, and not marketable.
So I would say, which I've said often enough, in order to be interesting, both as a human being, as a friend, as a spouse, as a parent, if you want to be interesting, you have to be interested. And you have to be
I like
interested
that.
in everything. You have to
You
be
have to be
interested in the
interested.
sciences, in literature, in the arts, in culture, to my mind.
Sure.
There may be other people who say, to hell, I'm not interested in arts and literature, I love cooking. Damn
No,
good.
it's very interesting because I'm like that. Currently, I'm reading about Schrodinger's cat, which has got to do with quantum physics.
Quantum physics, yeah.
Now, it's got really nothing much to do with my waking life. Of course,
Does it matter?
Yeah. Kind of does because I am in a mechanical engineering business as well, but it's just something that I'm curious about. Now, I don't know who to go and talk to about Schrodinger's cat because I don't think very many people are interested in subjects that are out of
Well,
that
certainly
little
don't
box.
talk to any of your friends because they have a very veterinary approach to your entire issue. But again, why do you want to talk? How does it matter?
Sure, that's
See, the
actually a
thing
nice way
is,
to think about it.
we are always looking at, I won't say approval, but we are looking at engagement. Sometimes you don't need it.
Yeah, I
Because
think that's
why
actually
would you
something good to
waste
remember.
your time talking to someone who's an absolute idiot and who will just sap your energy?
Yeah.
So preserve
Conserve
your
your
energy, read more, pass that on to people who are close to you, children, whatever, rather than actually wait to get some form of comeback or approval
I love that.
from some joker who has no
I'm
clue.
going to remember that.
Yeah.
If your WhatsApp chats leaked tomorrow, what headline would your PR spin?
Actually, I'm very, as you've seen, my WhatsApp chats are very brief and
To the
business-like.
point. Yeah,
So, they can leak, I don't care.
I know what you mean. I mean, I'm very.
Yeah, I
To
mean,
the point too.
the worst thing you'll get is me telling one airport rep that I'm landing by this flight or that flight. Doesn't really matter.
Okay. You've seen public figures fall from grace, I'm sure, in your career. Who, in your opinion, was someone who truly turned their brand and took some real accountability?
Richard Nixon, very interestingly, when Nixon resigned post Watergate, he lived a life of absolute isolation.
I didn't know that.
And it was Bill Clinton, when he was president of the United States, that Clinton reached out to Nixon and invited him to the White House and showed Nixon's portrait.
Okay.
And Nixon and he embarked on a massive discussion on China. Please remember, the Look East policy by the Western world was started by two people, Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger. So it was gracious of Clinton. It was equally magnanimous of Nixon. And then Nixon became this expert on China. In fact, if I remember my history right, Nixon made almost about 9 to 11 trips post his presidency to China and then created a whole, ecosystem where people like Deng Xiaoping and all were warming up to the West. That's how trade between China and the US began. That's how China became the factory of the world.
That's very
So you have to
interesting.
go back.
I didn't know that.
The other person is King Charles. When Diana's death happened, there was revulsion against the royal family, including against Queen Elizabeth. And she said, animus horribilis to the year that went by, referring to Diana's
Sure.
death. But, the royal family bounced back. Charles is today loved as a monarch, and I think he's doing a fabulous job. He's putting duty above health, and people love him.
I say a word or phrase, and Suhel, you have to just answer. Almost perfect, but mostly not, unless, of course, you really can't resist and add something more. Broadway musicals,
Miserably puerile.
CEO turned motivational speakers,
Frauds.
Met Gala outfits,
Even more miserable than Broadway musicals.
self-help books,
Again, worthless. You might as well buy a DIY kit for, repairing the tap in your kitchen.
celebrity memoirs.
Utterly useless because they're dishonest.
I wouldn't disagree. Airport lounges,
Again, miserable.
WhatsApp, university, aka fake news,
It depends on how mindless you are to believe that.
political speeches.
Some are really invigorating. John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country.
Political manifestos before elections.
Brilliant. Read them. The tragedy is no one reads them. Everyone cursed BJP about Ram Mandir. Everyone cursed BJP about Article 370. Half the jokers hadn't read their manifesto. They did exactly what they said they would do in their manifesto. But people don't read, which brings me back to my point.
Correct.
People have such cast iron opinions based on trivia that they may have heard that they actually haven't delved into scholarship or into reading.
People who say, I'm humbled on LinkedIn.
I mean, I don't read LinkedIn for that one reason. They must be really stupid.
Reality TV weddings.
Useless. I mean, why?
New York winters.
I love them.
Mango season.
I'm ambivalent about it.
Delhi traffic.
I'm fine because I read in the
Bombay
car.
traffic.
Again, read in the car.
Gen Z slang.
I don't understand what that means. There are only two kinds of people in the world, unintelligent and intelligent. Whether they're Gen Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, I don't care.
Stuff like how they say, this is sick. It actually doesn't mean you're sick. It means you're cool. That's Gen Z slang.
Again, I'm not averse to it. I don't feel bad.
I can't
or
keep
good.
up with it.
No, I
I'm a
don't
millennial.
care because I still use finite words because that's what I've been taught. Someone
Shakespeare
has
must
been-
be churning in his grave.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Now, someone wants to use I'm sick or you're sick, that's fine.
Crypto bros.
No idea.
Binge watching documentaries.
I watch documentaries,
Series.
but I don't binge watch, but I love documentary.
Wedding hashtags.
Don't care.
Billionaires race to space.
Don't care.
Okay. Lastly, what's one marketing campaign you wish you had masterminded?
Fevicol.
Okay. Interesting.
Because they elevated a super glue to a great tradition of India, whether it's a bus being overpacked, a truck being overcrowded, a fisherman fishing and actually putting Fevicol on those fish
I
sticking.
remember those.
These were interesting alliterations of who we are. A, B, I love Amul and what they do.
Yeah.
And I
Lovely
love
girl.
what Suresh Malik did with Mile Sur Mera Tumhara and Rag Desh. Desh
Lovely.
Rag.
Finally, if you had to leave our audience with one brutally honest truth about perfection, ambition, and carving one's own narrative and niche in today's hyper-curated world, Suhel, what would it be?
I would say be ambitious as long as you're not denigratory or derogatory or cutthroat or killing people on the way, because that is not right. There is no such thing as perfection. I don't believe there is something like perfection, so stop chasing perfection. What is the other thing?
Ambition and finding one's own niche. We should say.
Yeah, these are again podcast questions. Finding one's own niche. Do
We
whatever
are
you want.
on a podcast.
Yeah, but do what you want. I mean, you want to find your niche, find your niche. You want to find your shoelaces, find your shoelaces.
Love it. You want to find your niche, find your niche. You want to find your shoelaces,
Yeah,
find your shoelaces.
this whole thing of we must direct the world in a particular manner in order to make it more gracious and more self-serving.
I think today we might have taken away that perfection is overrated, Shakespeare is essential, and Suhel Seth will always have the best seat on the table and in life.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Suhel.
Thank you.